Oh, you know what that intro means. It is Good Night Qatar. Are we going to do that every time? Because that music, it's like the big band kind of music. It just makes you want to move your hands and give those jazz hands, everybody. But welcome on into Good Night Qatar. Andy Petrillo, Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson, Gareth Wheeler with you. Qatar 2022 has officially kicked off. First match in the books. Ecuador taking on the host nation, Qatar. This one ends 2-0. Could have ended way more. Maybe it could have been 3-0. We'll discuss a little bit more. But it feels like there's a lot of mixed emotions here, Gareth, with the start of the World Cup. A lot of people talking about things off the pitch, but of course you then get entranced by things on the pitch. Now that it's all started, all the pomp and circumstance of the opening ceremony, how are you feeling now that the World Cup has started?
Conflicted. Like, there's real mixed emotions here because there's something special. I'm going to enjoy this because it's the last 32-team World Cup. 48 teams is too many for me. I'm excited about waking up every day and looking forward to a month long of football, which is incredible. Canada back at the World Cup for the first time in 36 years. There's a lot of feel-good stories, but it all just seems bizarre. It's in November. It's in the middle of the domestic season for European clubs. The issue with migrant workers building the stadiums, the cost, the geopolitical ramifications, it's very complex. So as much as I just want to sit there and just watch the football, just watch the pretty pictures, and they are beautiful pictures that are being provided to us, I think it's natural to feel a little bit conflicted just about the entire thing.
Yeah. Ollie?
Yeah, much the same, to be honest with you. There's stuff that feels strange. It feels like we've been thrust into this tournament with very little build-up time. There's stuff that feels a little dirty, obviously, with some of the things around migrant workers and the issues that have been well documented now in Qatar. And you're just kind of hoping, I think, at this point, not to dismiss those concerns or to say they'll go away in any way. But you're just kind of hoping that you can start to enjoy the football, right? And that side of it will take over. And what we love about the World Cup and we've all fell in love with and grown up on will start to bring us the joy that it normally does. Today's game didn't really do a whole lot of that for me, to be honest with you. I'll wait for tomorrow maybe for that to get started. But that's what you're hopeful about. Like last night, I watched the new Ronaldo documentary, which I really highly recommend if you haven't seen it. And that kind of, got me in the World Cup mood a little bit, feeling these stories of, the incredible 98 final, where obviously he had the seizure before the game and was, really unwell and lost the game. And then the redemption in 2002, like it's emotional stuff, right? It's really moves you when you watch that back. So those are the things we love about the World Cup. And hopefully now we'll start to get into that and feel that. But I'm with Wheels. It does feel like a very odd one right now.
Mm-hmm. Jordan?
The two handsome men. I don't say that lightly, guys. You look stellar. Yeah, you Wheels. I'm talking to you, buddy. They've already addressed the conflicted side of things, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. I'm just gonna move on to the fact that I'm so excited to be watching the World Cup, and a weird twist having it in November around Christmas time. Usually in the summer, it's a bit busy, and I usually miss it because of football. This is the first time in my life where I can sit down and watch it. I'll say the game today wasn't the most exciting, but moving forward, having 4 games a day, I'm looking forward to just taking in football, sitting down and watching it and really being able to dissect the beautiful game. Because this is what the World Cup does, right? It brings countries together. It brings people together. There's times that you can just really reflect on the game and just enjoy each other. So I'm excited for that and looking at the positives.
Yeah, I mean, and we obviously are going to talk a lot of the soccer. We also want to make sure, though, we all have heard the phrase, sports washing, and we don't want that to happen. And we always want to make sure that we put the pressure on the federations to always do good by their players and by the countries and their fans, right? So we always want to make sure that they are going to places that preach their own philosophies of inclusion and acceptance. I will also just clarify, Ollie, when you say Ronaldo, it's not Ronaldo, it's Ronaldo of Brazil. Because whenever you say Ronaldo now, everyone just thinks Cristiano.
That's Cristiano.
Not.
So you're talking Brazil Ronaldo 1998, so true that story of him, and then Brazil 2002 with the redemption. So let's get to this match. Let's talk about this game here. Ecuador, Qatar. Ecuador wins 2-0. Valencia with both the goals for them. There could have been one in the third minute. I'm sure we'll touch on that in just a moment, but it's worth mentioning. So in 2018, guys, at the World Cup, we know that VAR was introduced. And because VAR was introduced, we also saw a record number of penalties, 29. The previous record was 18. The last World Cup, even before Russia 2018, so the 2014 World Cup, we saw 13 pens. So that just goes to show you 13 pens in 2014, 18 was the previous record. We saw 29 because of VAR. And I say this because I'm thinking, oh no, what are we going to see when it comes to offsides now that the semi-automated offside system is being used? 29 different body parts can be monitored by cameras all over the stadium. There are 12 cameras underneath the roof that also are monitoring the ball. Yikes. But overall here, Ollie, was this also just a lesson was Ecuador class in this one here against Qatar, making their World Cup debut as hosts?
Yeah, well, let's start with the positive, I guess, which was that Ecuador looked very good. I don't think Qatar are very good at all. So how much you can read into that, I'm not sure in terms of their results in the next two matches against much stronger opponents. But on paper, Ecuador looked like a good side. They've got some good players playing in high levels around Europe and around the world. Caicedo, I think, is a class act in midfield. And they took care of Qatar with no issue here. I can't say I was hugely surprised by how off the pace Qatar looked. When you look at their results, I know a lot of people are kind of gone on that Asian Cup win as seeing them as a competitive team. Since then, it's not been great at all for Qatar. There's been a lot of struggles against the kind of teams that you face at a World Cup. And I just thought the big issue for them was the same one that we saw against Canada in September, which is a lack of physicality. Whenever the ball comes into the box, they look completely at sea and like they're not sure exactly where they should be or what they should be doing. And they really struggled in that area. So it was a professional performance, I thought, from Ecuador. But there's bigger tests to come for them in the next two games.
I hope you listen to your Uncle Wheeler in making the play. It was free money. Ecuador at plus 140. Come on. We knew what Qatar was all about. I feel like this whole idea that Qatar's coach is very good. And like Ollie said, how they played fairly well a couple of years ago, it just kind of inflated what this team's all about. They're no good. I'm just going to hold this up. Horrible. My best bet for the tournament was for them to lose all three games, and I'm still on that. Ecuador, bueno. This team is excellent. Their fullbacks, Estupiñán and Preciado, bombing down the wings. They're good down the flanks. I love a good 4-4-2. They're athletic in the right places. This was a team in 2019 that finished third place at the Under-20 World Cup, and a lot of these players have now come through the team, and you can see why they were so good at that level. So it's very much a youth movement. I think that this team it should be considered the favorite amongst between them and Senegal to go on and qualify for the next round of this competition.
Yeah, and even though it's the youth movement, Valencia was at the last World Cup that they made an appearance in, which was 2014. Ecuador did not qualify in 2018, so he's leading the way. He plays in the top flight in Turkey. And it was obviously disappointing, both those goals being scored in the first half, 16th minute, 31st minute, that in the second half, we already started to notice empty seats. A lot of the Qatari fans
embarrassing.
We're out, we're gone.
Wow.
That was a bit of a shocker. You're like, okay, game one already. And you could argue Ecuador maybe took the foot off the gas a little bit in that second half because Qatar started to come at them. Maybe that was the reason why Qatar was generating some stuff, but don't give up so quickly. My goodness. But
who's going to World Cup? Who's going to the opening game at the World Cup? It's not just Qatari fans. It's people of money, people of influence, their partners, commercial partners. I cannot believe you wait around for a World Cup for 4 years and you leave your seat before the end of the 90 minutes. That's downright embarrassing. I don't know about you. It left a real sour taste in my mouth.
It's a great decision to give this game its own day, right? Like we really needed to focus on this one and no other games today to start the tournament. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that was another, this World Cup was not supposed to start today. They were also asking for the first game to be moved so they could do all their lovely fireworks and light display because they wanted the game to be played in the evening because suddenly they looked at the schedule and went, oh, wait a second, this is going to be played during the day if it kicks things off on Monday. So let's switch it to Sunday. Anyways, I'm wondering though, Jordan, as you look at these teams, because we talked about them in our preview show, did it change your opinion at all of Qatar and Ecuador after now you have finally seen a 90-minute game under their belt?
Well, the gentleman, the two gentlemen there and yourself.
Do not call them good looking again, or I will mute you.
I'll take it.
We'll say the gentleman this time.
Striking.
We said Qatar would not win a game, and I personally don't think they'll score a goal. Like they are not. It's just a 3-man race. Qatar is not involved in this. Ecuador, it's hard to say because they had a great performance. Obviously, I just want to see them against better competition. But I think we all agreed here that Ecuador is just missing like a golden boy, or someone that's in form, a striker, someone that can make a difference. We saw that in the first half today with Valencia. And this is what the World Cup can do. And this is why it's something that is coveted, and we love watching it every 4 years, because you can take players that are maybe in form for their club, but it doesn't always translate for the national team, but vice versa, right? Some people just show up for the big occasions. So he already has 2 goals in the bag. What that looks like for him. I was reminded watching in 2014 as well, just how great James Rodriguez was for Colombia, right? And how the trajectory of his career took off after that tournament. Not to say that Valencia here is going to go to Real Madrid after playing and scoring 2 goals, but just what he could do for his country. So for me, it just showed that Ecuador can absolutely make it out of the group, and Qatar will not.
All right. Well, there you go. That's their thoughts on this match. Let's find out what Kristian Jack thinks. He's in Qatar. Let's send it over to our boy.
Day 1 of the FIFA 2022 World Cup is in the books here in Qatar. We're here at Al Bayt Stadium after watching Ecuador dismantle Qatar by 2 goals to nil. It was really that comfortable, and Valencia's first half brace was enough to give that side a 2-0 victory and really start to look ahead maybe to getting through this group already with a fantastic 3 points on the opening day. It was really a case of the good, the bad and the ugly from day 1 here at the World Cup. Let's start with the good, the return of the games. That's after all why we're all here. Many of us have followed the story over the last couple of days. We all are aware of Gianni Infantino's comments on Saturday, the FIFA president, and just how ridiculous some of those were. Thankfully, we're now talking about the games, and we're talking about the reasons why we're here. Now, the good also extended to how well Ecuador played. They were very, very good, particularly for 45 minutes. Although it has to be said, we'll move to the bad now, their opponents were nowhere near good enough. In fact, they were quite woeful. There were shambles in the first half, and Qatar has spent a long time getting ready for this tournament. They spent 12 years getting ready for it, and within half an hour of the host's first game, they're really seeing a potential exit already from this competition. They were that bad. The other bad thing about it really was, I think, the whole atmosphere. And that's where we get into the ugly side of things today. It was a difficult thing to watch in the second half. Now, it's a FIFA World Cup. We're here. We're grateful to be here. It's a joy to be here and to cover this tournament. You know, coming here, I was thinking about the memories of past tournaments, going to World Cups. Really, it started to get the juices flowing. And I wanted to start to, you know, see something that we're not normally going to see here in Qatar. But I think what we saw today, particularly from the hosts, wasn't really the standard of football that you would expect. Now, international goalkeepers, I know sometimes have difficult days. Certainly, Sayed Al-Shab had a difficult day, and he wasn't very good. But I think the entire team, they looked nervous, and that really reflected to the atmosphere. Many people would have watched the opening ceremony by Morgan Freeman, and it seemed to hype up the crowd. But the moment the whistle started, really the moment the whistle started, really the hype and the balloon just burst in the stadium. It was a strange atmosphere. 3 minutes into the game, Ecuador scored a goal that was later disallowed for a narrow offside. Now, a small section of the fans inside the stadium immediately recognized the goal wasn't going to be counted and started to cheer. A larger, more educated proportion of the fan base suddenly started cheering about 10 or 15 seconds later. And that was a real sign for me that there was a lot of people here tonight that weren't really a massive fan of the sport or even the national team. At halftime, many of them disappeared. By the 60th minute, the stadium was probably only 2/3 full. By the 80th minute, it was half full, and the atmosphere really wasn't what you would imagine to be a World Cup. Now, it's a Sunday night here. We're a little bit further away from Doha, but leaving home to beat the traffic is not something you usually have on your FIFA World Cup bingo card. So a difficult day for Qatar. This show is called Good Night to Qatar. We'll say good night from Qatar, and it appears for Qatar in the World Cup, it's good night Qatar already.
Yeah, he's hitting on a lot of points there, and I think we're all kind of nodding our head going, yup. So that's KJ. We'll be checking in with him daily. He is in Qatar. When we come back, we are talking Canada when we return, and of course the mixed messaging that we're getting. Is Davies in or out versus Belgium? Let's discuss next. World Cup began today, but Canada will officially get theirs started on the 23rd. They will take on Belgium, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's Wednesday's schedule. So they will be the final team to kick off. Wake up nice and early to see Morocco, Croatia, the other two teams that are in their group, and the competition that they will be facing with those two as we welcome you back into Good Night Qatar. Auntie Gareth, Ollie, Jordan with you. We're getting some mixed messaging, guys, when now we turn our attention to Canada. So I don't know who is messing around here, but, John Herdman has come out and he's been giving updates. And, he's been saying Alphonso Davies, who just joined with the team the other day, we know about his hamstring injury. We also know he hasn't been cleared yet. We've heard that Stephen Eustachio pulled out of training, didn't play in their last tune-up against Japan. And now he's also concerned about goalkeeper Milan Borjan, saying he felt something in the abdominal area in that game against Japan as well. And then Alphonso Davies gives an interview to TSN and he's like, I'm good. I'm good to go. Haven't sprinted yet, but I'm good to go against Belgium. Ollie, do you believe him? Is he, or is he getting caught up in the hype of the World Cup?
Well, who am I? Who am I to not believe Alphonso when he talks about his own body and his own health, right? And I certainly like to believe him because I want him to play. I think in terms of the mixed messaging here, my advice to people would be if the messaging is mixed and confusing, just stop listening to it. Right, because I think everyone kind of has their own agenda here. Alphonso obviously is desperate to play, so he's obviously gonna say he feels great. He wants to go. He wants to play in this game against Belgium. John Herdman wants to play a few games with Belgium, right? He wants to keep it unpredictable. He doesn't want Belgium to know what starting lineup he's going to pick, and to create a bit of doubt there, as we're seeing with Stephen Eustachio and Milan Borjan as well. So I would be inclined to say, judge less what they're saying and judge more the facts that we actually know and we have in front of us, right? And the facts are right now, Stephen Eustachio is being described as soreness. I have a very hard time believing soreness is going to keep him out of a World Cup game. Milan Borjan seemed to sit out one training session the day after a game. I'm not going to be too concerned about that. I think he'll be okay. And Alphonso, we know it's a bit more serious, but we also know that he's returned to camp on time, on schedule. He's back in training on time, on schedule, with 3 days to prepare for the Belgium game. So it's probably looking pretty good for him to at least play some part in that match. I hope he starts. I hope he, the truth of it is as positive as he gave off today in his interview. But we'll have to wait and see what kind of role he plays.
Wheels?
I wouldn't expect him to say anything but I'm ready to go on and start that game. This is a huge opportunity for him as a player, as a brand, as just as someone who loves the game and has waited his entire life to play in a World Cup. Now, I feel like as journalists, as commentators, we can only comment on what we know. And we were definitively told ahead of the game against Japan that Davies hadn't started sprinting yet, and he was behind schedule, whatever that meant. It seemed like that was only a day behind schedule as he flew in a day later. Something that we do also know is the coaching staff, the medical staff, they rely upon analytics and statistical analysis like never before. John Herdman is heavily invested in these methods in order to protect his players and come up with the best game plan possible. I have a hard time believing that if his medical staff say, look, you need to pull back, he can not go 90 minutes, he can only go 30 minutes, he can only go 60 minutes, that Herdman would betray the science behind it all either. So until John Herdman definitively says one way or the other if Davies is going to start or not, I will still kind of have an open mind on it all. And to be honest with you, it doesn't suit anyone's interest in the Canada camp to disclose whether Davies is going to start or not. And these are the mind games that he continues to play. And this isn't anything new. This has been happening for months on end now. So I think that he's trending in the right direction. 60-40, he goes on to start that game, but there's nothing definitive I don't think we can take from that.
Something else that we do know, gentlemen, if we're looking at precedent, is Bayern also has a lot to say. John Herdman has admitted as much that he is in constant communication with the pro clubs. Bayern in particular has been very vocal when it comes to Alphonso Davies. And we know in that World Cup qualifier against El Salvador, that was more Bayern not wanting him to play because of a little something that he felt in his knee, more so than John Herdman not wanting him to play. So until we also hear about medical clearance from Bayern and Canada Soccer, we won't know. But I guess the question then, Jordan, and this is all we can do, is have hypothetical conversations. If he cannot start, what if he's, on the bench? If you're John Herdman, and now you have the potential here. Eustachio, we don't know what's going on with him, and Borjan, and we're still not sure about clearance for Alphonso Davies. How are you lining up against the world number 2 team in Belgium?
I think, I believe that, so to answer your question from before, I believe that he wants to be ready, but how much he can give for this first game, well, we don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see in the next couple of days. But I think in an ideal situation, you have him start, obviously, but what could be a nice little backup is him coming off the bench at halftime or 60 minutes in. If my prediction holds true and we can hold Belgium and their attack to no goals and 0-0, what a substitute that is. Him coming in the 60th minute, maybe with the likes of Larea, maybe with Cavallini at the top, just coming with and infusing the Canadian team. So for me, we just got to really be careful because he is the X factor and he is the ace card. I don't want a situation where we maybe push him too soon or he's too eager to come back and we lose him for the rest of the tournament. So even if that means him coming off the bench, that's still a win for us having him. And then we go and maybe try to win those games against Croatia and Morocco. So for me, it's just important that he takes the right steps. But him coming off the bench is not the worst thing in the world. I feel like most Canadians would love that.
Well, let's talk about their opponent because speaking of mixed messaging, I don't know what's going on here. I feel like there is definitely this sentiment from a lot of Canadian fans, and they're pretty hopeful that Belgium is an older squad. They're one of the eldest that will be competing at the World Cup. That back line looking pretty old, and it's like, all right, wait a second. I think we can get a result here. But I guess the rest of the world is like, nah, this is still Belgium. This is still world number 2. Then they go and they drop their final friendly before the World Cup 2-1 to Egypt, which then prompted Belgian reporter Tom Boudewil to basically say that Belgium would be lucky to even advance out of the group stage. So now it sounds like there's a sentiment within Belgium itself. I'm not saying one reporter speaks for the entire country, not giving us that much credit, but for him to say that makes me wonder how many other people are thinking that, Wheels.
Tommy boy. Come on. You're not actually expecting us to buy that load of junk. Why? I understand now the squad isn't the same without Romelu Lukaku leading the line. He's going to miss the first 2 games. Who knows? He might not even be able to play at all. He's played 3 or 4 games this season. That's it. I understand that's a loss, but this team is deep and very good. I'm not sure how really a meaningless friendly before the game before the World Cup for an Egyptian side who can go full out. They're not playing in the World Cup. By the way, finalists in the African Cup of Nations. So they beat Belgium 2-1. So what? This team hasn't lost to inferior competition since 2016. They're flat track bullies. This side is littered with Premier League players playing in the top leagues across Europe. There's 4 players who are now going on to play in their 4th World Cup. They arguably have the best goalkeeper in the world, Kevin De Bruyne. Is there a better player in terms of form right now, playing right now? Maybe Kylian Mbappe, but Kevin De Bruyne is right there as well. Come on, this team is good enough and have the weapons to go on and make a deep run in this tournament. Anything other than that, I think would be a massive surprise. And most certainly when Tommy Boy's speaking about these things, he's not doing it in comparing Belgium to Canada. He, like the rest of us, rate Morocco. We rate Croatia. It's a very difficult group. But if Belgium doesn't get out of this group, boy, oh boy, I would be shocked if Tommy Boy's premonition comes true.
But Ollie, doesn't it also not bode well when, Eden Hazard comes out and is like, I was great in 2018. I don't got it anymore.
Yeah, not at the level. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it wasn't exactly a quote that would fill you with confidence. Lukaku's out. Hazard's talking about his drop-off over the past 4 years. I watched a bit of Axel Witzel's press conference, and he's talking up Buchanan and David and Davies and saying we got to be careful about the spacing behind our defense because these guys can hurt us. Like it's not exactly a group that is giving off a ton of confidence going into this game. Now, I think there is vulnerability there. I think there is pressure there for Belgium for all the reasons that Will said there. This is a team that expects or is expected to win the tournament, right? This is the last chance for the golden generation. There's a ton of pressure on this team. I'm not sure there's a ton of conviction within the team that they can actually go and do it. And that, I think, can be a really difficult thing in terms of how you approach a tournament mentally and how that starts to weigh on you. Now, at the same time, I still think that a vulnerable and a little bit fragile Belgium can still beat a lot of teams, right? So we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves here. But do I think there's a little bit of a chink in the armor that John Herdman is going to latch onto and try and attack and try and exploit in any way he can? Yes, I do think that's there. And it's going to be interesting to watch, even if it doesn't manifest itself against Canada. I think it could be a storyline in this tournament as it goes on.
I always wonder, Jordan, when you're getting set to take on a team and they're basically bigging you up. We know there's gamesmanship and everything too, but I'm wondering how you're feeling as a player. Yeah, if you're hearing Axel Witsel, saying these guys are so great and they can really hurt us. Are you even paying attention to the other team when they speak, or do you take to heart things they say?
I think it depends on the situation. I think right now Belgium is going into this game against Canada saying, like, we got this, we shouldn't be afraid. Now, I think for Canada, that works to their advantage. I think it's also the first game, and like I was saying to Wheels, where we disagree a little bit. I just feel in terms of that we could beat Belgium, or not beat. If not beat, then at least draw. That's a great result. But I don't think it's a game where Belgium's going in and saying, yeah, we have this 100%. Like, anything can happen the first game of a tournament, and anything can happen in football in general. So I think maybe it might be some tactical things that we might need to change. I know we're playing against some of the best. Kevin De Bruyne, he is the best midfielder right now. How they come and how they play, they're so dangerous, even without Lukaku, the weapons that they have. But it is one game, and it's just about taking care of moments. And I know that might sound crazy to say, but it's the first game in a tournament. I honestly feel if we start well, or if Canada starts well, that's
the thing. If this is true, then Canada needs to come out quick. Need to score that first goal, put pressure, and ask questions of Belgium. I believe that there's enough experience in this team that they won't be phased. I think that this is all outside chatter emanating in corners that aren't coming from that camp. They didn't play up to their standard. They had an eye forward to the World Cup in a game against Egypt, who are a good opponent to play as well. I'm just not reading much into this, to be honest.
But guys, are we also saying this about Canada with the impression that Eustachio, Borjan are playing, and Davies is available? This is what we're saying when we're talking about getting a result against Belgium, right? Because, I mean, Jordan, are you singing a different tune if you find out, 1, 2, or all 3 are out?
As I said, we have the most depth we've ever had, but we cannot afford to have 3 or 4 guys injured to take down Belgium, or to just have a great tournament. You're relying on 17, 18, 19th guy. It's just a different Canada team. I'm saying that we need all of our guys guns blazing from the beginning, and we can make something happen.
It's our first World Cup. If Canada does somehow draw this game, this country should celebrate it like a win. Honestly, like a massive win.
Celebrate like you won the World Cup.
And look, I'm not saying like it's not possible. I'm just trying to put into perspective, like, this really is a David versus Goliath story here. 100%. Like, coming into this game and like trying to put Canada on the same level of Belgium, to me, people that are sitting in these chairs that know a little bit of something about this, it's a little bit disingenuous.
Yeah. Listen, World Cup, it's all about every reason to party. If your team gets a result, it's a draw. You party.
Still out here.
All right. Well, next up, we're going to take a look at the matches that will actually be played tomorrow. Expectations around England. And is this USA team the worst they've ever sent to a World Cup? Oh, dear. Welcome back to Good Night Qatar. Looking ahead to Monday's schedule, it all begins at 8 a.m. Those are the teams that will be in action right out of the gate. We're going to be talking England, Iran right now. England ranked number 5, Iran 20. And this, I feel like the theme, gentlemen, of this show is mixed messaging, because there are a lot of Brits I'm talking to. They're not feeling pretty good about this World Cup at all. We can discuss why or why not, but at the end of the day, Inter Miami manager, ex-England international Phil Neville, Ollie, came out and said, I think we've got the best set of players and the best team we've had. And then he also went on to say that England fans are right to be optimistic at this year's World Cup. But are they? Ollie, what's happening here?
They're not, but
That's
I think they're ridiculous. Like, not to tar the whole nation with the same brush here, but I'm with Phil Neville. Like, I don't understand the pessimism around this team. I understand that there's questions to be answered. The defense looks, a little bit like something that Southgate can have to throw together on the fly here. There's players who aren't playing a ton for their clubs. There's a question of whether you play a 3 or a 4 that's still open, but I don't get it. I really don't get the kind of disrespect that man right there, I think, receives in his own country. Like, I'm 30 years old now. The number of quarterfinal exits I've watched, the group stage flops, the failure to qualify for Euro 2008. Like, I've watched just disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. This guy delivers semi-final and final. And yeah, I get it. Obviously, that was a wonderful opportunity at the Euros to get over the line and win that tournament. We all know that. But it's a different level from what any of us in my lifetime have been used to. It's a team that actually looks competent at tournaments, looks organized, looks like they have a tactical understanding that, you don't always win tournaments by being super open and fluent and playing loads of attacking football. You have to be really solid and structured. And we have that for the first time in my life. And the fact that, Southgate gets portrayed in his own country at times as this like dinosaur who's reliant on Harry Maguire, I think is absolutely insane. But here we are. So we'll see who's right, I guess, at this tournament. This is ultimately going to be the referendum on Gareth Southgate and the way he's remembered, I think, long term for his spell at England.
All right, Jordan, where are you, though, with England? And I don't know, does Southgate survive this, though, if they don't have a good showing?
I don't think he does. They have to have a good showing for him to remain boss. But I also want to give his flowers right now, because you're looking at a Euro finals, you're looking at a semifinal of the last World Cup. Like this, I agree with Ollie, being 31, you always had England exiting tournaments early and always hearing, oh, it's coming home, chanting all the time, and not even getting into like the last stages. Always, right? Having won World Cup in '66, but I would say in the past 5-6 years, that's probably the best England side I've seen. I wouldn't say the most talented side, but I'll say the best side. They always come out and they always perform. Going into this World Cup, you're seeing that they're not as in form as maybe they would like to be, having so many defenders injured, players that are injured. You wouldn't say they have the strongest side going into camp, but I do look at this side saying that they can go to the round of 16, maybe even the quarterfinals. But I don't think it's a bust, them not winning. I think it's the expectation that Brits or England put on their national team. They feel that just because they have the best league and they talk football all the time, that they're expected to win. And for me, that's ludicrous. You can have a great league that everyone watches, and you could feel that football is the center of your life, but that does not translate into your country winning the World Cup year in and year out. And they sing and they chat and it's coming home. And I have relatives that live in England, and thankfully they have enough sense to be like, hey, there are other teams that could actually win the World Cup. It doesn't belong to England. But for those that feel like it is theirs, I would just say it hasn't been yours since '66.
Jordan, we have the best league because we have a load of Spanish and German players in it. Like, I think people maybe need to bear that in mind as well.
And coaches.
Exactly,
and coaches. Yeah. And culture, right? Culture. Yeah. That's a huge part of it.
Well, we'll see how England fares. Let's take a look now at the second game that will be played. 18th ranked Senegal. I know Sadio Mane will be facing 8th ranked the Netherlands back at the World Cup. They missed 2018. This is a team 3 times, Wheels. They've been to the final 3 times, the silver medalists. The last time was 2010. Would you consider them, though, a true contender?
I would. I think Group A suits them well. And, in the round of 16, playing a team, runners up in Group B, potentially if they go on and win this group, I think that's a generous draw for them. This team is very good. They play 3 at the back or 5 at the back. And those players, that might be the best group of players that play that position in this tournament. And oh, by the way, after Louis van Gaal took over after Euro 2020, this team hasn't lost a game, 11 wins and 4 draws. In fact, they went on to win their UEFA Nations League group, and they only conceded 6 goals in 6 games. This team has young, emerging talent up top as well. and a very balanced midfield. I think that this team has all the components of what you need to make a deep tournament run. Whether they're better than in Argentina, who they could be on a collision course with in the quarterfinal round, we'll see. Anything can happen over the course of 3 or 4 games, leading to a knockout round match of football. But I think that this Netherlands team has remarkably built themselves up, not only from not qualifying for 2018, but it was a real dip. And there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm around Euro 2020 as well. This team has a much different feel. There's reliability in this team. And I think they're the favorite in this group and a legitimate World Cup contender.
All right, the final game, we'll see Wales back in the World Cup for the first time since 1958, taking on the United States, who missed 2018 as well. They're back. They've said they've gone a little bit younger. There seems to be the belief, right, that they're really preparing for 2026. That will be on American, Mexican, and Canadian soil. But when you look at this squad, no Ricardo Pepi either, Ollie. If you're talking about youth, you would think maybe the 19-year-old would have been named. I don't know. But I'm gonna go a little hot take here on you. Is this the worst USA team we've actually seen at a World Cup?
No, it's not the worst USA team we've seen. Like I think you could go back to '94, and I know that team performed well, but what the US have now is on a different level, right?
They weren't even professionals back then, Ollie.
Exactly, right? It's not comparable. So they're not the worst US team, I don't think, by any means. There is a big question mark about how they're going to perform. I think they're going to be a good team in 2026 when you look at how young they are and the opportunity to play on home soil. This tournament, I'm not so sure. I think there's a real desire, I think, in the US and in the program to change the perception of this team, to be respected by the rest of the world as a team that plays progressive football, develops modern, players that can play at the top levels. I'm just not sure that this team is quite there yet when you actually look at, okay, that's great to have that philosophy and that idea. But when you actually look at the practical reality of it right now, they struggle badly away from home outside the United States. They have done throughout qualifying and in the friendlies before the tournament as well. Defensively, I think they're still vulnerable. I have real questions about the centre-back pairing, whatever pairing they play. And they struggle to score goals against good teams. So that, in both boxes, I think there's real concerns there. So I really think this could go either way. And we know what the reaction will be in the United States if it goes the wrong one.
Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about this, Wheels?
I agree with Ollie. Their center backs give me nightmares if I was a U.S. soccer fan. Like, they bring Tim Ream in the back from the abyss. I know he's playing every week for Fulham, but Fulham honestly have the worst XG, expected goals against, in all the Premier League. They're a nightmare defensively. And guess what? Their left back's the American left back in Anthony Robinson as well, who flies forward, but there's nothing defensively. And last time I checked, you need to be robust defensively at a World Cup. And some of their best players aren't in great form. For every Brendan Aronson there is, who I think is a wonderful player, he's the star player in this team for me. Christian Pulisic has 1 goal in 18 for Chelsea on the season and can barely get a game. They have other players that are coming in and out, have dealt with injuries. Look, I give U.S. Soccer a lot of credit in terms of the way they're developing players, but this is the youngest team heading in. I look at this as kind of being the stage that sets up for them nicely, get the experience under their belt, and then look ahead to 2026 when I think they could actually be a force of that tournament. But I think this is a step too soon for this group. I don't think they get out of the group. I don't think they come away with a win. They could very well finish bottom, the 4th out of 4 in this group.
Oof.
Jordan?
To agree with the gentleman, I won't say handsome, Andy, so you don't have to throw anything at me.
Smart.
But to agree with just the gentleman, I will say that in 2010, I remember vividly watching the U.S. play, and they made it to the round of 16, lost to Ghana. I remember that they're formidable, but they were just athletic as well and would hustle and run and work. I feel like they're getting away from that now, and I feel like they don't really have a clear identity of how they want to play. The worst thing that could happen as a footballer is you're trying to take a bit of this player or a bit of that country, you're trying to piece it all together. There's nothing wrong with the U.S. being hard-nosed and sticking to what they know. To have a team right now that kind of is dabbling and doesn't really know. I know they're young and revamping, but to get back to that 2010 team that I really enjoyed watching in terms of they would just run and work and grind. They were unified. We hope in 4 years' time that the U.S. gets there, but right now I know it's not all there, and I would love to hear what's going on in the camp because I would love to see that group kind of unified and just get back to that hard-nosed, formidable group that I know they could be. So I don't think they're making it out of the group, but I also just know that this is not their tournament. But in 4 years' time, who knows? Because you asked me 4 years' time about Canada, or 4 years prior, I had nothing positive to say. But you're looking at us now, or Canada now, and bear smiles on my side.
Big game against Wales, Andy. This could decide it. Gareth Bale's been taking notes sitting on the bench at LAFC, but all these American players. He's got the inside scoop. Welsh are a difficult team to break down. Like, stronger together stronger. This team plays together. So I don't think that this is an easy opening match for the USA whatsoever.
All right, we've given some thoughts on that. Let's head back to Qatar and hear what KJ has to say about Monday's matches.
Hello, we're here in Al Gharafa, around about a 15-minute drive outside of central Doha. The United States Soccer Federation's training facility is right behind us, and they get set to start their World Cup on Monday, of course, against Wales. More about that game shortly. Group B kicks off on Monday, though, with the other two teams in that group, England taking on Iran. It is the 7th consecutive major tournament for England, and of course, with it comes remarkable pressure from fans and, of course, the media alike. Now, Gareth Southgate's team are traditionally very slow starters in major tournaments. In fact, England, in 5 of the last 6 openers, have only scored 1 goal in each of those games. In the other one, of course, the opener against Tunisia 4 years ago in Russia, where they almost scored 1 goal, but Harry Kane's 91st minute winner was enough for them to defeat Tunisia by 2-1. So perhaps a tepid affair against an Iranian team who are traditionally very difficult to break down. Carlos Queiroz is back in charge for that team, and of course, defensively, he has made them very solid again. In his 4 games in charge since becoming their boss in September, he's just conceded 3 goals in that game. Perhaps England can get a goal early and change their fortune and look to take over that match. The middle game before we get to the last game tomorrow is the other game in Group A, a clash of 2 legends in different dugouts. Aliou Cisse, who was captain of Senegal in their run in 2002, is in charge of that team. What can he do with the emergence of other players stepping up? Because, of course, Sadio Mane is out of the World Cup. And Louis van Gaal, the iconic manager in charge of the Dutch, he told the media here yesterday he will be wearing his lucky orange underwear and get ready for the Netherlands to try and defeat Senegal in a big game in Group A. The other clash in Group B, of course, is in Ahmed Ali Bin Stadium. That's around about a 10-minute drive from here, where the US will take on the Welsh. Wales will play their first game in the World Cup since 1958, led, of course, by Gareth Bale, now the eldest member of the outfield squad in that team. Now, they lack World Cup experience, but what the Welsh do is they have the ability to get through tournaments. They qualified through the groups in 2016 at the Euros, topping that group, and got through the groups again at the Euros in 2020. Their opponents are the Americans. They also lack some World Cup experience. In fact, DeAndre Yedlin is the only player with World Cup experience in that squad. It's their first game in a World Cup since playing Belgium in the 2014 knockouts. What can they do? It seems like expectations are quite low around the world for the US team. I really like this team and think they can get through this group. Don't sleep on the midfield of Musa, McKennie. They're very good in Adams. And perhaps this is the World Cup for Christian Pulisic, the X factor in that team, and arguably the best player on the pitch tomorrow night in that match. So whether you feel English, whether you feel Iranian, whether you feel American, maybe you feel Welsh, either way, Monday is your day at the FIFA World Cup.
Shades of Infantino, who we will be speaking about a little later on in the show. But first, we're going to turn our attention back to Canada's group. When we come back, Morocco and Croatia play first. How will that result affect Canada's match later in the day? Stay with us. Welcome back into Good Night Qatar. We've been discussing a lot what we want to see Canada do against Belgium, of course. You know, why not? Canadian media. We want to see how they line up against Belgium. Who's going to be ready? What result would be great? We all agree a draw, celebrate in the streets. But here's the thing, gentlemen. The 2 other teams in their group play before them. And in this kind of tournament style, how do you move on? Well, you've got to rely on some other results. So Jordan, you first. When Croatia and Morocco take each other on earlier in the day, what do you think is the best result for Canada's hopes of advancing?
Tie.
Thank you for that very succinct answer.
That's it.
Next commercial break. See you later.
Let everyone tie. The last day we take it. We get 3 points.
But like a 0-0 draw, because if it ever comes
Perfect.
down to goal differential, just like 0-0.
I'll take 1-1, but like we tie Belgium, and then we go for it the last 2 games.
All right. Where are you on this one, Wheels?
100% a draw, and I think that it's plausible. Croatia's a very difficult team to beat. Like, they continually look year after year, they do so well in these major competitions. They have a vastly experienced central midfield, some good young center backs in this team. I think that they can push Belgium being the front runners in this group, but don't sleep on Morocco as well. I feel like Morocco doesn't sound as sexy as Belgium or Croatia, but this team is full value. This team has gone on and played some good competition in the recent friendlies. They absolutely worked Chile, out shooting them 20-3 in a 2-0 victory. It was full strength Chile side as well. And with Ziyech and Mazraoui and Harit coming back into this team, there's just a much different complexion about this group. So they're going to be a difficult team to beat. What you want to do is stay alive for as long as possible. And that means other sides need to drop points. And the more that the games matter for these other sides, so there isn't any dead rubber at the end of the group, that bodes well for Canada or any other side that wants to stay alive too.
Ollie?
Yeah. +1 for dropped points, and you want the lowest points threshold possible to get into that second place spot from a Canadian point of view, right? So I think a draw would be an excellent result for Canada. It's going to be an interesting game. I think there's an element of promise, but also doubt about both of these teams. So to get a gauge on where they're at in this game, I think they'll both be tested by each other. I think will be interesting to see from a Canadian perspective. Croatia are not the same team that they were in 2018 when they went to the final. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't still be very good. Because
might be better, Ollie. I think
they might be better. Some of the players who have come in to replace the outgoing players look very, very promising. So they're going to be an interesting one to watch. But it is a different team. And Morocco, I think, a bit more of an unknown for most people, at least anyway. So this will be an important one to get a grip on where the other two teams in the group are at.
All right, gentlemen, we're rounding out Good Night Qatar. And when we come back, we have to talk about the press conference everyone's talking about. FIFA President Gianni Infantino addressed the world yesterday. And I'm saying it again, guys, mixed messages. We'll try to make sense of it next. It's Good Night Qatar here on One Soccer. Andy, Jordan, Gareth, Ollie with you. Gianni Infantino has been playing defense really for the last week with the media here. And he was really on the defensive when he gave his press conference to officially kick off Qatar 2022. And it's a simple question, Jordan, because there really is so much to dissect here. What did you make of Gianni Infantino's press conference?
There's a lot to be said. I think what I really want to just say, I'm just going to keep this really quick and then I'll give it to the boys. But I'm looking at this event called the World Cup. Every 4 years, the world comes together, right? The world comes together to watch your teams. You watch it with your brothers, your sisters, your wives, whoever. It's a time to come together. Right now, all the stuff that's been going on in Qatar, I just don't like the division. I think for me, I want to get, I know I'm living in a land of maybe cotton candy and Skittles and everyone gets along, but I just want it to be about the football and I want everyone to be respected. This is just all I want, simply. So the madness and the mayhem that's going on behind the scenes, I'm just not for it. I would love the games to take precedent. And I would love that what's happening in the papers is all about players and how they're doing and how they're representing the country. And again, just bringing people together. So for me, it's ludicrous and all the stuff that's being said. So I'll pass it on to Ollie. I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
Oh, I think you're muted, Andy.
Ollie, do you want to take it away?
Ollie,
no, I was muted there.
Well, I want to let Andy get in here.
I was just going to say that I get where you're coming from, Jordan, because, you know, even as somebody who covers the Olympics, I will always say it's so unfair when the athletes have to answer for the decisions that were made by the federation. But no way should we be letting Infantino off the hook. I mean, no way should we be letting past, you know, people like Sepp Blatter, who was even part of this decision, off the hook. But Ollie, what did you make of his very defensive comments?
Well, I mean, part of me can't help but laugh at it, right? Because it's so absurd listening to what he's saying. Obviously, there's a much darker side of it as well, which is much more difficult to stomach. Overall, you know, thinking about it more over the past day or so, like I just felt quite sad about it, really, because it's not just this World Cup. I think it's emblematic of where football is in general right now, where I feel like there's so much money. The money is out of control. I feel like the people in charge of the game feel out of control. And as a fan, it feels like you have no control over that, right? You have no real way to influence that. Like, we're just all here along for the ride. None of us like what's going on, a lot of what's going on in the club game and at the World Cup as well. None of us like the direction it's going in, but what are we supposed to do about it, right? You feel quite powerless. So you just wonder where, what the end game is here and what the consequences are going to be when all this comes home to roost. And, seeing Infantino today sat next to MBS with all the rumors of a 2030 Saudi Arabian World Cup bids. Like, I don't know where we're going here with the sport anymore, and what, like I said, the kind of end game of all this is going to be. I just don't think it feels like it's going to end well, and that's difficult with a tournament that we've all grown up, loving, and a lot of us have fallen in love with the game by being put in front of a World Cup, and it feels like it's being devalued and dirtied by the decisions that are being made and the people in charge right now.
Mm-hmm. I just need 20 seconds. Infantino's words, I don't get bothered by words, but that has more to do with his own legacy. He's responsible for what he says. What I care about is what's actually happened. And I have a very difficult time reconciling the fact that between 6,500 and 15,000 migrant workers lost their lives, some of them making $1 a day, building these stadiums from scratch for this World Cup, all in the name of profit. $1 billion more profit at this World Cup than the previous one. Profit over people doesn't work, period, end of story. And that's what makes it all so difficult to stomach. Not Infantino's words, it's what's actually played out over the last decade in Qatar.
Which is why here on Good Night Qatar, we're talking both the footy and we're talking both the human element and the stories. All right, let's do it again tomorrow on Good Night Qatar.